Welcome back, everybody. Taking your phone calls from the Borders and Borders hotline. 412-575-2600 is the number. Josh Taylor in for Rich Walsh tonight, joined in studio by Gene Collier from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Been talking a lot of Steelers. Of course, night practice in Latrobe. Mike Tomlin gets a contract extension. And we're talking everything else, too. As we stand right now, Josh Harrison has just driven in a run. The Pirates now trailing the Padres 3-2. It was actually 3-0 before the bottom of the fifth, but they are now within one run. We will go to the phone lines. Let's start with Jerry in Hempfield. Jerry, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, Josh and Gene, I didn't get your comment on your opinion on, first of all, two Western Michigan college football players got arrested for a crime and they convicted. They're going to prison. Now, Pitt has 5 players were suspended and 2 were indefinitely thrown off the team. They lost their scholarships. What is going on with these recruiters? Aren't they doing their due diligence when they look at these high school players, see what their problem is in school, after school, looking at them versus just their ability to bring them into college? I'd like to hear what you got to say about this. Probably happened all over the country, but I'd like to see what you think about what's going on with this stuff. Thank you.
Appreciate the call. That's hard to call, really. That's really hard to predict. And, Gene, I'll have you weigh in on this. But if you're trying to find, and bear in mind, when college coaches are recruiting high school kids, correct me if I'm wrong, Gene, they're talking about kids that are, what, 16, 17 years old? All right. And most of them, I'd say a large number of them, I'd say the vast majority of them probably don't have that many things that stand out as far as previous offenses at that age, because we're still talking about kids that are teenagers here. So as far as what they're looking at or not looking at as far as recruiting, I don't know if they're just not looking at anything at all as far as certain kids they find, because recruiting has become a more, it's become definitely a more personalized and more specialized science, if you will. So I don't think they're just ignoring what some of these kids are doing. I think they do their due diligence. They talk to coaches. They look at their grades. They have to go through the NCAA clearinghouse. So it's not like they're just throwing a dart at whatever name and taking whatever comes. I think what we're looking at is a situation of you have a bunch of young kids. You have, what, between 80 and 100 young kids at a campus running around trying to figure out, what and what not to do. And sometimes there's kids that don't know what not to do, and they get themselves in trouble. But I don't think it always reflects on the recruiters, does it?
Well, I mean, it reflects on the recruiters to the extent that they're willing, if they're aware of kids with problems, that they're willing to take them anyway. I think that reflects on recruiters.
Right, which is a situation in and of itself. But generally speaking, is that the same situation?
Yeah, no. But I think, what we're seeing, like now at Pitt, and what was his first reference to people at Western Michigan? Western Michigan. I mean, this has happened every fall back to the inventions of college football. I mean, it's old news. I mean, it keeps happening. You have young men, excitable men, away from home for the first time. Exactly. They're big men on campus. They're not all going to behave. I mean, there's such a thing as the bell curve, and they're on the edges of the bell curve, and they're always going to be that way.
And I think it's safe to say that not every kid that gets in trouble while he's a part of a college program has a rap sheet full of stuff that he's done in the past. There's some kids that show up with no prior incidents, and they make one bad mistake, and sometimes those things come back to reflect on them. Go back to the phone calls, 412-575-2600. Let's go to Ryan in Hopwood. Ryan, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hi, I want to talk about Kirk Cousins not signing.
Well, we lost. Sounds like we lost Ryan. Okay, we'll go back to the phone lines here. Let's go to Derek in Pittsburgh. Derek, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Are they going to keep the players or draft them away from them?
Which team are we talking about here?
The Penguins. Are they going to keep them or trade them?
Which players are we talking about?
The Penguins. Will they keep them or trade them?
By them. Who do you mean by them?
Well, I hope they keep the same players from last year.
Well, most of them are already signed the contracts. They re-signed Connor Sheary. They gave Brian Dumoulin a contract extension. So as far as it looks right now, the team that is constructed right now is what it is. Is it going to stay that way? I'm not necessarily sure, but let's put it to you this way. If it happens, if it changes, if someone gets moved, that's the reality of it. That's just how this is set up. And Gene, I don't know a better way to describe it, but it's very, very seldom that teams stay the way they are from one point of a season to another. Things can change within a couple of weeks. Sometimes the season dictates how things change. Sometimes if the season isn't going as well as a team wants it to be, they might need to shake things up. Or if things are going better than they expected, or if things are going well and they know they have to fix some things in order to maybe make that next leap or get ready for the playoffs, they have to make changes as well. It's really not an emotional or a sentimental situation. It's really more or less what the team needs to do in order to be better or stay at the level that they're at. But feel free to fill in if I'm missing something here.
Right you are, Josh.
Dynamite drop in there, Gene. We'll go one more caller before we take a break here. Paul in Greenfield. Paul, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Guys, how are you this evening?
Good. How you doing?
All right, Gene, this is for you. Gene, you've been around an awful long time, and I appreciate your opinion on matters. I hear about the Steelers and their stability all the time. They are a charter member of the NFL. 1933, they came into the league when George Halas started the league. My uncle told me the more people went to boxing matches at Duquesne Gardens than they went to Steeler games for 40 years. I was just wondering about the stability back then. Thank you.
That wasn't snarky or anything, Gene.
Oh, no. I mean, that's an excellent point. The Steelers were losers for 40 years. They had 8 winning seasons in their first 40 years. Art Rooney, God bless him, you know, he was incredibly talented at many things, but running a football franchise was not one of them. The Steelers did not have any success until Dan Rooney came and hired Chuck Noll. And there you go. That's the history of the Steelers. What the point of all that is, they weren't stable then. You're right.
Now, I'm glad you point out the rise of Dan Rooney as far as the man running the team. And this is something that you can't really, I mean, you might not mention it firsthand, but it's not something you totally ignore right now. This is their first training camp in God knows how long, decades.
This is the first
without Dan Rooney being a part of the organization.
Without
Dan Rooney. I mean, that's significant. I mean, if you want to talk about, you know, maybe the opposite of stability or maybe a difference in the stability, that might be the first piece of it, is that Dan Rooney is not there in Latrobe. And if you watched, some of you watched some of the televised coverage they had on ESPN, they actually interviewed Art Rooney II and asked him about that. So, look, it's your first training camp without your dad. Have you had time to think about it? He admitted it. He says, look, there are some things that have happened, some things I've seen, and some things that have happened that have, you know, reminded me of the times that he was there and helped me realize that he's not there. But, you know, from the stability standpoint, the guy who really is synonymous with that stability is Dan Rooney. So for him not to be there and for them to have this first year and to move forward without him, I think that really sticks out. So that's something that you kind of keep in front of you as you move forward, because knowing that the franchise will essentially and quite frankly will never be the same. Got to take a break here. We'll come back. We'll answer more phone calls. Stick around.